Meeting concerned a proposal for a solar energy in Waymart. Please face the flag and we will repeat the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I ask each of you to give your name so that our guests here know who you are concerning this whole subject of solar energy.
No official action will be taken tonight.
And who would like to start off, please?
I will, if I can. Good evening. My name is Andrew Miller. I'm from MPL Law Firm in York, Pennsylvania. I'm here this evening representing Belmont Solar Partners, Belmont Turnpike Solar Partners, and Solar Renewable Energy LLC, which is the owner, the 100% owner of Belmont Turnpike Solar Partners. With me this evening is Doug Berry, who's the principal of Solar Renewable Energy out of Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania, and Joe Burgett, who is our land surveyor and prepared the site plans for this evening. We're here this evening because we are proposing, or Solar Renewable Energy is proposing, an approximately 11.3 acre sized solar facility on property at 198 Belmont Turnpike, which is just outside or just on the edge of the borough of Waymart. The project would be an approximately 2.5 megawatt AC solar project. It would be what's known as a net metering project, which means the electricity from the facility would be sold directly back to the PPL electrical grid for distribution and repurchase by borough residents and also residents in the local distribution grid. Net metering projects work the same way as if you had solar panels on your roof. There's a meter at the project. As the project produces electricity, it's pushed back into the grid. The project uses a little bit of electricity to run its own inverters and transformers within the project, but the vast majority of it's pushed back into the grid. It's purchased by PPL and then resold to customers in their local grid. This project is in your rural residential zoning district. Your zoning ordinance doesn't currently provide for solar energy, so we've applied as a use not provided for under the ordinance, which the Borough Council can decide would be a conditional use or a special exception. We've requested that this be eventually heard as a conditional use. In the rural residential district, the purpose of the district is to ensure the preservation of certain agricultural areas and open space while providing for development compatible with the objective of protecting environmentally sensitive areas. There's a number of uses that are listed that are allowed in the rural residential district. Again, this one is not one of those, but we do feel it's compatible with that district and that area. As you'll hear this evening, these projects are passive projects in nature. There's not a lot of earth disturbance in developing the project. The racking systems are actually pile driven into the ground. There's not a lot of excavation, grading that goes on. There will be a pollinator friendly mix of grasses planted on the facility, and everything underneath the panels will remain grass. It is consistent with the preservation of agricultural areas purpose of the ordinance, in that this will not be a permanent destruction or permanent removal of the agricultural soils from this area. When the facility is decommissioned at the end of its life, everything can be pulled out of the ground. The agricultural land that was underneath it is still there. There's still grass underneath it, and it's been rested for the period of time of the project. The projects are typically around 30 years. That's the life of the panels. I believe this one is I believe a 30-year lease with 2 5-year extensions potentially on it. The property is on a parcel owned by Linda Drake, and we had in our application, she signed verification certifying to you that the property is under lease by by Belmont Turnpike Solar Partners, and that she agrees and consents to this application being filed with you. I'd like to then start, if we can, I'd like to have Mr. Berry just do a short presentation for you so you get some background of Solar Renewable Energy's experience and their qualifications to do these projects, and we'll give you a handout where you can, and I believe it was in our packets originally if anybody has the application itself, but we have copies. We'll give you to have some pictures of projects that they've done, and you can describe some of those. Sure, it may have to have one share. Let me see if we have.
We can share.
They're in here, aren't they? They're the same one.
Yeah, I think that's the same thing.
Pages, whatever.
Yeah.
I think.
Any more copies, gentlemen, in the back are from the planning.
Orange John, orange bagel.
Bucknell, not Bang.
I should have corrected myself quicker.
Get it
Proud
right.
Bucknell.
Thank you. Who's the alternate? Dean the alternate?
Dean and Tim.
I just walk through, real quickly here. Solar renewable,
Sorry, sir.
solar renewable energy, it's a family-owned business, but we're actually out of Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania, so we're actually Pennsylvania-based. I would tell you that we've constructed about 350 solar projects, so we're one of the bigger CNI developers, not large, not utility scale, but more the 10 acres to 2 or 3 acres scale level. Typically out of the 350 projects, I would tell you 90% of it has been here in Pennsylvania. So to give you a little bit of idea, I think a picture's worth 1,000 words. Just to give you a little idea of the picture that we have here. This is our office building. This is where we built the first one about 15 years ago. Just to give you an idea, we wanted to test it in our own building to make sure that it actually truly worked, and before we did it on anybody else's. As I go down, the next one down the bottom here, this would look a lot, very similar to what we're actually saying that we'd like to build here. This is actually at State College. It's a sewer authority there. It's called UAJA Sewer Authority. So that gives you an idea. And that is about 12 or 13 acres of ground. So if you go over to the next picture over, that's actually a floating solar project. So we actually built 2 out of the 3 largest floating solars in the United States. So we're proud of that. So that gives you a little bit idea of how technical we can be and creative to make those sort of things happen with it all. So we did a 4.5 megawatt, which is that one, and we did one twice this size, it's about a 9.5 megawatt one. The next one up here in the corner was probably the most difficult project we've done. This is about 2 football fields. But what it is it's actually in Washington, D.C. It's actually on a parking garage. And it's within 1.5 miles of the White House. To give you an idea of that. So, flip down through. We bring our own capital. We're unique from a lot of projects. We actually bring our own capital to projects. We typically will lease or we'll own ground. This in here we would actually lease. It's from Linda Drake. So it's helping her with her cash flow for pay the taxes and stuff like that on her property. So she asked me to share that with everybody and say that was what her purpose was, that she was trying to accomplish with us. And we actually pay the lease. It would be a 30-year lease with the 2 5-year options with it all. We actually, internally, we develop these sort of projects. We actually are actually the general contractor on these projects also, just to give you a little bit idea. The majority of our projects, I would tell you, probably 70%, 68% are actually ground mounts. We do a fair amount of roof projects then also. On your page 6, gives you a little bit of idea of some of the names of some of the projects and some of the people that we've actually done projects for. A lot of school districts. Probably the closest one in this area would be Central Columbia. That's still a little ways from here. With it, that was one of the bigger projects that we've done. We've worked for American Waterworks. It's one of the bigger projects that we've actually done some major projects for. If you look on page 7, it gives you just some of the other projects. This is the one I talked about, was UAJA. So it was one that we actually did the project that I showed you the first picture. They come back to us about 2 years later, said, hey, this really does work. Will you do another project for us? So we actually did a second project, was about the same size with it all. So I always like those kind of things because that really endorses that things did work and people were, happy with the way it was handled. This is actually one, give you an example. This is actually has sheep that we actually use for mowing inside of it. So we have about 35 sheep, I think is what it is. And this actually helps keep the grass down rather than mowing it itself. So it's trying to keep the whole solar array in an agricultural sort of feel. Next one is, as I get back through, this is actually a retirement community, Londonderry Village, which is in Palmyra, Pennsylvania. This has worked out very well for the retirement community. And it's funny, as we started to build these, a lot of the residents, we had problems, wanted to actually walk and see as we were building it. They're all very interested in how it actually all works out. The next one was actually a school that we have. It's a Midwest school district. And we did a project that you see here. We did another project for them because this one worked out so well. And we've actually just finished the third project for them on top of the roof. So this has worked out very, very well. The next one I had was actually correctional center. That gives you a little bit of idea that it works right next door to a prison with it. And the next is a retirement community. This one, as you guys should view it, you can see that the panels are actually 2 panels high that are all on a portrait basis with it all. And you can see underneath it that basically you have 3 feet. We like to have that much so that way you can mow underneath or to get sheep underneath without having any problem with that. You can see the post underneath that these are the piping that are actually driven into it in a racking sort of scenario. And maybe probably have enough of them. Here's Milheim Borough is another one. York County Solid Waste Authority. That's a big producer of electricity and actually garbage is what they burn typically. And this was a brownfield that they actually had, so we actually put solar on top of that for them. The last one we have there is just Penn Township. That was in Lancaster. Just to give you one other piece here with it all is the operation and maintenance side of it. We actually have the panels, we have inverters that are actually taking the DC, converting it back to DC. Thank you very, very much. What happens with that is we have a monitoring system. And for every 15 minutes, we actually have monitoring and it tells you how much production you're actually generating. And it'll actually let us know if we have inverters and have inverter issues with it all. We don't have very many inverter issues, knock on wood, with that sort of thing, but it tells us that so that way we can address the issue. and try to, make sure that the system is running its full capacity as it should be. So, you want questions now, or you want to just move through the whole thing?
It doesn't matter. If anybody has any questions that you feel need to be talked about right now. Yes, sir. Would you-
I'm Wayne Maycheck, and I'm in, on the planning commission. I was just wondering, are these, panels, are they stationary, or are they, do they follow the sun?
They're all fixed.
Oh, fixed, that's the word.
Yeah.
Fixed, yeah.
Yeah, we've had experience, we actually have, some that actually rotated with it. The fixed scenario just has less problems, we have less issues with them all. So we've actually gravitated, because that's what we do exclusively, so just less problems and less. Yeah.
Okay, and you said they're 3 feet off the ground?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I have a question. What is this considered? Is this considered industrial? Is this considered manufacturing?
Not sure.
A solar farm?
That's right.
What does it classify as?
Sir.
I mean, are you're producing electricity, so is it, are you industrial? It should be two.
Commercial?
Commercial?
You need one more, sir.
Do you have one more? Thank you. Who is responsible for removing them when you're done with them?
I'm sorry, did you want to help me
So,
answer that question?
Yeah, so, I mean, if the electricity is sold back to PPL, it would be a commercial system. We've in our application shown that the system would comply with the commercial operation or performance standards in the ordinance. It is also, agricultural uses in the AR, or in the RR district would be commercial uses as well. I mean, they are selling goods and products in commerce, and so we feel as though this, even though it's a commercial use, this is a commercial use that fits with that zoning district and the uses that would be surrounding it. So it's typically is not considered an industrial facility. It's not actually bringing things in and taking things out. There's no truck traffic. There's minimal, I think, Doug, you can address what the maintenance typically is on the project.
Yeah, typically our maintenance, we usually try to come out once a year with it all, to actually maintain and look at all the fuses, all the back wiring and stuff like that. Otherwise, we have the monitoring that tells us that there's an issue. At that point in time, we come out and address that sort of thing. And typically, we like to have sheep coming in to take care of the grass. If we don't have sheep, we actually would mow it, and usually mow maybe like 3 times a year or something like that, that we would plant grass. But it's low, no-mow grass, basically. But otherwise, we address it with sheep. We have the grass that would actually address,
I have another
for sheep.
question. And I think everybody in this room is aware of it. In Texas, they had a major hailstorm that destroyed the solar panels. Where do you stand with that? If something like that was to happen here, or tornado, something like that, then that would cause these solar panels to break up and scatter the debris all over the place.
So, and that's a great question. So these panels are rated to an Underwriter Laboratory standard for the industry. They are built to withstand hail up to a certain size. I believe it's up to a 1/4 inch or a 1/2 inch size hail. Also to withstand winds up to 130 miles an hour. Your question though is, and this is something that I believe is an important thing for Pennsylvania and for the industry, or one of the biggest benefits of these kinds of systems. The system you're talking about in Texas was 1,000, 2,000 acres of solar panels. It was a massive, massive system. There's a lot less resiliency in a system like that, in that you had one storm that took out lots and lots of panels at the facility. What Pennsylvania has been doing in these projects in particular is building smaller projects, in this case 11 acres compared to thousands of acres of panels that are widespread, that are spread out across a lot of different areas. So your chances of having a major electrical outage because of a storm become a lot less, because your distribution system is a lot more distributed, or your generation system's more distributed, much less likely to impact multiple of these facilities than one. And Doug, how many systems do you operate currently?
I mean, there's 350 that we built, we own actually 70, something like 75.
And that's going back over 10 years now, correct? And in that time, have you ever had a problem or extensive damage from any storms?
No, and I can tell you that one of the partners that owns one of the projects with us, he actually had solar on his roof with it all, and he always still gives me a rough time, but we had actually installed the solar on it. They had a hailstorm, and it actually dented the roof all around the solar, but it didn't dent the solar. So he got it replaced all around the solar, but he didn't get his whole roof replaced with it all. So that was how, I mean, it damaged the roof, but not damaged it.
I know, but we are having crazy storms. I mean,
Right.
okay, North Carolina and stuff like that right now. What happens when they do get damaged, or debris does go all over the place?
Well,
Who's responsible for that?
and
is there, like, you guys have to have a bond for something to,
Yeah, and just first to address there have been recent news articles about in the hurricane, when Hurricane Helene hit North Carolina, there was a town with a microgrid of solar panels, and that town actually maintained electricity throughout the entire storm, and actually was utilizing some of that electricity for other locations down there. The same thing happened when Hurricane Ian hit Southwest Florida a few years ago. There's a development down there called Babcock Ranch, which was built to be a sustainable development with solar panels. They never lost power during that hurricane either. So there are some real world stories about the resiliency of these and the benefits. But in terms of replacing the panels, those I believe you have the monitoring that you mentioned, and what is your response time typically when you have a damaged panel or damaged panels in a facility?
I mean, it's usually the next day or 2 days later that we address, depending on how major the system going down. It'd be the same day if it was really, really major, but typically it's a day or two. We have our own staff that actually takes care of that.
And another point just to make about, and we just handed out, Doug, if you can just describe the panels that you're using for this facility, the VSUN 590s.
Yeah, it's a VSUN 590, and they have a 30-year warranty with it. Give you an idea with it all. I mean, this is what they look like, to give you an idea. So the VSUN has been a panel that we've used probably 90% of our projects. We found it best.
Where are they manufactured?
This is actually Malaysia. That's where this is manufactured. We would love to have them in the United States, but they're just not quite there. Give it another year or two, and I think we'll be in good shape there in the United States. But it's just not readily available at this point in time.
I have a question on the glare. Will there be a glare to the borough residents in the area when the sun hits these panels? They'll shoot off to their houses or homes?
So we do have a glare study, a model analysis done of that, and if it would be okay with you, we'd like to present the plans first, and then we've actually modeled what the sound impact of the facility would be, what the glare impact of the facility would be, and then we've actually had prepared a health and safety analysis based on these panels. One of the important things to note about these panels is they are a fully silicon-based panel, so they're not, there were, and actually the panels manufactured in the United States, one of the problems with them was they used cadmium in the panels. These are not a panel with any cadmium in them. These are considered a safer panel than those if anything would break. The materials in them, other than a little bit of soldering for metal parts in them, is inert and would not cause
Lead
any
contamination,
problems.
anything would get into the ground if they did break, is there
But
anything?
there's silicon, so there's not really anything in there to that would be a contaminant or would cause problems. These aren't the panels. Some panels had been made with cadmium in them. These are not those types of panels. So
Do you want to continue with your presentation, Doug?
Sure. Yeah, you asked one question, I didn't mean to.
Oh, no, I just, like, who is responsible to take these out when they're done?
It would be us.
Dean, did you have a question?
Should we go on with the rest of it?
Yes, go ahead with the rest of your presentation, and then there'll be more questions afterwards, okay?
Maybe if you could just explain the inverters and the combiner for the system yet, and then we'll have Joe present the plans.
Yeah, what you have is the panels. Panels are actually they're actually bifacial panels that you have. So you're actually getting, let's just say if this is a panel, you're getting the radiance off the front side, but you're also getting it off the back side. So the back side actually will give you somewhere 5 to 10% production with it all. That's DC power is what it generates. The DC power goes into the inverters. The inverters actually convert it from DC power over to AC power. And that's what we actually have on our wall when we plug in here with it all. The AC power goes, and all the, behind the panels, there's a racking, and there's racking trays. So, and that's for all the wire management that you have with it all. And what that does is it all runs into, for that particular row of panels, you actually take those into something called a combiner box. And the combiner boxes will actually all combine those various panels that you have with it all. And then there's actually a string that actually runs, that would actually go underground. It would actually go from the very back of the system to the very front of the system, and actually that actually takes it out to the transformer that you have. The transformer would actually take it out. We'd actually connect right to the 3-phase that you have that's right in front of Linda's house there with it all. So the connection with that sort of thing is the same as what you'd actually have with a house. There's no major substation or anything like that. It's just directly connected to the 3-phase that you have with it all.
So there's no storage facility at all?
There's no battery storage proposed for a facility like this. And that typically doesn't, I don't believe you've seen that in the net metering market, that they've done battery storage, because it's going right back into the grid for use in the local distribution system.
So what happens if the grid doesn't require it?
So if there's overflow capacity?
I mean, that's what the various utility takes care of. So therefore, they're actually distributing throughout the grid. So if it's not being drawn on, then they actually have that they're being produced less electricity somewhere else. They have various production areas that are actually generating it. You have some that are generating a lot of power, but are pretty constant. There's others that can actually respond very, very quickly and create the power. So, and those sort of systems get shut down at that point in time. So that's managed by the utility itself.
I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but if that facility's installed, I guess there's two things: noise. Does it produce any noise? And also, how much light does it produce at night after dark?
It doesn't produce any light at all. Did you not wait for the studies?
That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, we have a noise modeling study based on a tentative layout of the inverters.
Yeah, if you address it, then that'd be fine.
Joe, if you could give an overview of the plans. And one thing to note about this, the location where this is proposed, I believe it's close to 1,300 feet back from Belmont Turnpike, So as you see the plans, you'll see that we've designed this to be set back quite a distance from the actual road and the houses that would be in the general area.
About 600.
Okay. 600.
Okay, good evening. I'm Joe Burgett from Burgett Associates. We did the site plans for the presentation. I'll flip through a couple plans here showing you a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But Linda Drake's home is here, sort of right across, the property right across from Silvercrest Drive. There's a child care center that was converted to, what was it? What's the new building here next door?
Help you guys with the,
Mallard Meadows.
No.
That's this building here.
And Mallard Meadows is not that yet.
So the property is this big field here. The array is going to be positioned in the back portion here. This is another view that sort of shows you the array. So this is Linda's home. She has a barn, some outbuildings, another garage, and another dwelling on the property. There's a cemetery here. I don't know if you all know about that. Historical cemetery there.
It's the first settler of Waymart.
That's what I understand. That's pretty cool.
Asa Stanton, he was a colonel in the Revolutionary War.
Wow, that's awesome. And then there's a pond right behind it. So everybody sort of understands the property. The property has a big section of woods in behind here. We have no intentions to do anything there. Our limit of the array is this shaded area here. There's a drainage way that sort of comes down through the property that we're staying away from. There's the existing entrance right across from this was a Sky Crest, I think I said. Silvercrest, thank you. The entrance is going to come in right beside the barn and sneak back and tie into this existing field road that goes back into the field.
Can I say something there?
Most definitely.
Several of us live here, and there's a water problem, drainage, and my property is right here.
Sure.
And if you build all those things there, it's gonna plug up all the faucets and bring it flooded out.
Well,
Are you aware that it's wet in there?
okay, so we won't be blocking any water because all these are is posts driven into the ground. The grass is going to stay exactly the same. Okay, so I can give you an example here. If you look at this one photograph back here, I can show you. So this is what they're going to look like here. So we put in I-beams in the ground,
Yes.
and then this grass, if you laid down underneath these panels, it would look exactly like it is today. Just all grass. So we pound the posts in, we put the framing on, and set the panels on top of that. So all the water naturally comes across as it is today. And we had a wetland delineation completed so that we don't make sure that we don't disturb any wetlands, and obviously that's why we're staying out of that natural drainage way there. In fact, as far as stormwater runoff and stuff, you know, solar's been a big thing here in the last 2 or 3 years, and DEP, Department of Environmental Protection, knew that this was going to come, and so they've actually come up with what they call a DEP FAQ, it's frequent asked questions about solar. So they figured they would have a lot of questions come in about stormwater and how that's going to be affected with the runoff, water hitting the panels coming off. And DEP come up with the FAQs and has come up with guidance for surveyors and engineers that do the layouts of these solar arrays. So this is a detail right out of the DEP FAQ here, that if you position your panels a certain fashion, a certain manner on the property, if you space them out, then the water that comes off of this panel as it drips will be soaked up in the ground by the time it gets to the next drip edge of the next one. So if your slope of your ground was less than 10%, and it was a vegetated grass field, and they'd like to prefer the grass to be a little higher and a little thicker, then they say that the water comes off of that drip edge will be soaked into the ground before it gets past this next one. So if you keep going and keep setting that array up that way, then we're naturally letting the ground soak the water up so it's not affecting any neighboring property downstream. Yes, sir?
What's the pitch on that field there, where the
This the slope of the ground of the field.
Excuse me, the slope,
Yeah. So
right there.
yeah. So we have this map that we prepared here that shows this little drainage way. This is the limit of the wetlands that we had delineated. So there's all these little like pink lines on here. So the slope varies obviously everywhere you go on there. So you can see up here how we have panels sort of coming around this area here. There's a section of slope greater than 15%. So DEP says you can go up to 10 with no issue. If you go from 10 to 15, you need to put what they call splash pads at the drip edge. What that does is eliminates the energy from when the water hits that steeper slope and absorbs that into the ground. All these pink items on this map represent slopes between 10 and 15. Anything that's not pink is less than 10. So anything with pink would need the splash pads at the drip edge. And anything up here, this we're staying out of that area because it's greater than 15.
So what you're saying then, in heavy rain,
Yes.
you know, the thunderstorm or something like that, the runoff is gonna be all taken care of, it's not gonna, there's no erosion? You
That's
can
correct.
guarantee no erosion?
At DEP, it has FAQs, most definitely. That we're following the DEP environmental protections guidance on solar farms.
Okay,
Yes.
I seem to disagree, but anyway,
Okay,
go on.
sure.
Was there a soil test done as far as drainage, as far as whether the soil could take on that water?
We have not done any soil testing at this point. If we are approved by the hearing or whatever we have here, then we will be required to submit a land development plan to your planning commission, and we would be probably reviewed by your engineer, okay, and we would have to go through that process. And they may require something like that at that time, but at this time, it's basically a schematic of where we want to put this, and it meets the DEP FAQs and all that to get through the hearing process. And then if we get approval of that, we step into a more detailed engineering designs, reports, or whatever we need to do. Because we're going to be bringing probably a new driveway in here, and there's going to be a turnaround here. We're going to do probably some stormwater stuff for those impervious surfaces.
Just because the soil around here is, we have a lot of hard pan.
Yeah,
So the drainage really isn't the greatest in this area.
sure.
So I was just wondering if you guys, if that's a requirement for this project to do soil?
We have not had that requirement in the past because of the DEP FAQs and keeping those slopes flatter.
Okay.
If you put them on hard slopes, steep slopes, you're going to have a potential for more erosion, and having it on a flatter slope will help absorb the water into the ground.
Well, now, if I understand it correctly, if there's ledge under there with maybe 6 to 8 inches of topsoil, you're gonna have a lot of erosion, wouldn't you say?
A ledge under what?
Ledge underneath that whole field would be all ledge.
That's all ledge.
The right side.
Starts out there Route 6 and goes right back.
I don't know what you mean by ledge. Is
Oh,
it rock?
it's
Solid rock,
bedrock.
solid gray rock.
Solid rock.
So there's no soil on top of it?
About 8 to 10
There
inches.
may be, not a lot.
Yeah. You say 8 to 10 inches?
About it.
Yeah.
You
I
may
mean,
have
soil is soil, and grass is grass. I mean, it's going to stop it and slow it down, which helps that infiltration into the ground.
Yeah, but it's gonna run on solid ledge. It's not gonna infiltrate any deeper than what you have in soil on top. It's gonna
Well,
wash out underneath.
Yeah. Well, we can gladly, we do infiltration testing all the time, and we can go out and do half a dozen. The time the land development comes around, we can do that kind of stuff. It's not a problem.
But it's working now, so as long as you don't disturb the surface, it should continue working.
That's how I see it.
Well,
Yeah.
and that is, an important point is the surface will remain, quite similar to what it is. It's grass now, it's going to remain grass, that's not gonna be changed.
No.
Like we said at the beginning, there's not gonna be any mass grading on the site either, so it's going to be left intact as much as possible.
But an inch of rain and the water's laying on the surface there, I land next to it there, so I see it. But it takes a couple of days and it goes away.
Sure.
But it goes away. As long as you don't disturb that, we're gonna have a day or two of wet field, but I do have it now, so.
Yeah.
But is it gonna change the whole environment because you're having the water is collecting and running off the panel onto one spot on the ground? And isn't that gonna cause more erosion, even though you do have those splash pads
Well, the splash pads are required when you have the slopes of 10 to 15. 10 to 15, you need to have the splash pads there for the DEP. But the water's coming off the drip edge,
Well,
and it's gonna go across the ground like it is.
well, if like in generally, like off of a roof,
Yeah,
you're gonna have a lot of water coming off there.
it's 3 feet off the ground.
Yeah, but it's gonna hit the ground, and where's it gonna go then?
It's gonna
It's
go.
gonna stay in that one spot. I mean, it's not
No,
gonna be dispersed throughout the
It
whole
will be
thing.
dispersed. Whenever the water comes off of your roof,
Yeah.
it creates more energy at the drip line because it's so much higher. Okay, but when it hits there, where does it go? It goes out the lawn.
I
That's what happens here.
I get that, but what happens, nothing underneath the panel is being rained on, so to speak.
But it's being collecting the water from the prior panel. The grass under the panel is going to be collecting and absorbing the water from the prior drip edge.
Right. And then isn't that exponentially, as you go down the line, or is at the bottom gonna be a ton of water?
No, because DEP
I'm missing
says,
something there.
no, it's okay. DEP says, for example, my 28 feet is about what from drip edge to drip edge.
Yeah.
Okay? DEP says, if I set this up 28 feet, the water from the drip edge is going to be soaked up before it gets to the next drip edge.
Yeah, if you-
So that water's now gone.
What are you gonna do?
Yeah, and hopefully if it's based on its absorption rate.
That's correct.
Yeah,
So, I mean,
it's gotta be tested. That's gotta, doesn't that
and
be
we can
tested?
do that.
Yeah, okay.
We can do, not a problem. But DEP is saying that if the slope is 10% or less,
Mhm.
and then by the time that water comes off that drip edge, it will be soaked in the ground before it gets to the next one.
On the perfect type soil.
Yeah, it's gotta be perfect.
Okay, sure, sure. I mean, we have had no issues with doing perk tests. We will gladly do it. We do infiltration testing all the time. We can go out there and,
I think a perk test would be
sure.
necessary.
And just to address as well, DEP has looked at the issue of the drip line and the velocity, and they've set a maximum height for that drip line of 10 feet. So DEP's done the analysis that as long as you stay under 10 feet, the impact of the height of that drip line isn't going to worsen the storm water.
Okay.
And these are typically at 3 feet because they're fixed tilt. They're not lifting up in the air as they rotate.
Right, so then I assume then the DEP will come and inspect this when this project is near completion, correct?
No, I don't think so. No.
So we're kind of.
Unless
taking
there is
your-
some sort of NPDS requirement or something, DEP would not be involved. The erosion control conservation district may get involved through an NPDS permit or something like that, depending on the land development stage, what comes out of that.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's move on. I think
Sure.
I'm curious of that. I'm sorry.
What I'm wondering is how are you gonna hold your panels if you hit ledge in 10 inches of dirt?
Well, they will do drilling. They come out and they do pre-pounding to see what it is, and then there's also a drill analysis where they can actually take a drill and drill it in instead of pounding it in, depending on the
Well,
rock.
they'll have to, that's
Yeah.
a logical thing to do. But what are you gonna do when you get about 30 or 40 inches of snow around here?
Well, they actually, Doug, actually, it's
And
actually
we
helpful.
did, it's no lie.
Address your first question you had with it all, I mean, you're either gonna drive the post in, but we have something called helical screws. So if it actually comes down that you have too much stone.
Yeah, I
too
use
much
them
there.
at work.
So, well, the helical is supposed to be able to go through stone like that.
It's
So, I
faster
mean-
than the, yeah.
We've done that other places here too. And then you just attach the metal post to it coming up from there. What was the other question?
Snow.
Snow. That's why we actually have it 3 feet off the ground. What you have is, I talked about the bifacial panels with it all. What happens with it is actually underneath, your production will become so much greater. Cause it'll go from like a 5 or 10% to like 30%. And it actually warms the panel up and will actually help shed the snow that you have with it all.
Well, we've got a freak snowstorm around here. 1958, we had 54 inches. And 1993, we had 40 some inches. So what are you gonna do when you get that much snow piled around it? And they start to melt. You have nowhere for the water to go, it's gonna freeze, and then you have a real problem.
We've never had that anywhere we put the panels, and that's why we
When
always
you
try
didn't
to.
come to this part of the country yet, this is a whole different world.
And they do have a lot of facilities, I mean, especially north of here in New York State, I mean, there's already a lot of them established up there. There are more being built in this part of the state, in the northern parts of the states. I've worked on numerous projects in Erie, and snow is certainly an issue out there, a big issue, but so far what they found is, like Doug has said, the snow is actually a benefit for them. They get a lot more production in the winter than they anticipated out of them.
So, as far as the traffic off of the state road, we will have very minimal traffic coming in and out here. Once this is constructed, we will have, for mowing over the summer months, you all know the more rain we get, the more we gotta mow, right? So, I mean, we may be here 2 trips a month, we may be here 1 trip a month. DEP likes the grass to be 9 to 12 inches high because it does create more of a absorption, slows the water down environment for the water. Other than just the mowing, unless we had the sheep, that would definitely cut down on the traffic as well, is the maintenance. You know, they come in that one time a year to do their yearly maintenance, but if there is something that comes up on their cell phone that says that they need to check something, then they'll come in here. But it's mostly a truck with a 15, 20-foot trailer. They take their Bobcat or take their little gator off and they drive around and then they leave. And or they take their mower off and then they leave. So very minimal impact as far as traffic. If you look at this aerial in the front here, the existing buildings, the barn, the existing home, and the sheds do create a really nice viewing buffer from this side of the road. You guys were talking about the glare a little bit. The sun does come up on this side, you know, and sets on the west. But there is a lot of existing buffer there already.
So which way would they actually be facing?
Face south. So you'd be
Face
looking
towards
the
them.
side of the panels this way. Yeah. Like we said, the panels are 3 feet off the ground, 10 foot high, the max. We do propose a stockade cattle fence is what we typically put around these units or these arrays with a locking gate. We do have, once the array is installed, we do contact the fire company, have the fire company come out and give them that full access and review everything as far as the disconnects and all that with them so that they're well trained on what needs to happen. There's never been any issues, but we do offer that at every township, every site. And this is, like I said, this is what it's going to look like. You got the cattle fence around, wood posts. You have the post and the grass. This is exactly what it's going to look like here. We did prevent, Doug went through a couple of those samples. These are just some street views. This is the field back here. That's going to have the array on it. This is the lower driveway below the barn, which would be the northern driveway. This is the field back here. It's going to have the array. We're now at the southern end of the property. This is the southern property line. This is looking through. The array would be behind the homes here. This is just looking through the one shed. The array's back behind here. There's the mower that's going to be mowing the array. This is looking back again. So we're saying the natural trees and shrubs and houses here really do provide a nice buffer. The arrays back in the back. This is one little spot here. This is the driveway that we're going to be using to come in. We're going to come in here and go around here and then go down along this fence with the field entry here back to the back field. This is looking from the south. This would be that facility we were just talking about, which was a daycare or something at one time. The array's gonna be back here.
How far from the property line does that start?
Like off of this property line?
Yeah. You could, I don't know if you want that.
Okay. Check it out here. So we have, this is actually a 50-foot setback measurement here. So the array is probably 130 feet or so off the property line here. This is the closest point right here, which is almost 200 feet, probably 170 feet or so. This is looking from from this northern part. This would be the array would be back here in this field. This is just a tax map. Shows the property boundary. And this is just a zoning map that shows that the property is zoned the rural residential. So her entire property there is just about 89, or over 89 acres. Yes, sir.
Is any point on Route 296 will the array be visible?
Yes, yeah, I just showed that a couple places. Yes, sir.
Just valid. Now, is that going to be an issue with any, taking away the beauty of the northeastern Pennsylvania farmlands by looking out across this field, all of a sudden there's.
Well, you'll be able to see over them.
Well, I'm not saying blocking the view. I'm saying seeing them.
Seeing the panels?
Seeing the panels, yes.
Yeah, you're going to see the panels, but you'll still be able to see that beautiful sky view that you were just talking about.
Right. Yeah.
So we're not going to be blocking that at all.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
What benefit would this be to the people of Waymart?
Nothing to us.
Well, I think Andrew just spoke a little bit about some of the communities through the big storm events that helped increase the efficiency of your electrical system.
Not if it feeds into a grid.
Pardon me?
Not if it's feeding into a grid.
Oh, it's feeding into the grid, like just say, for example, let's just say there was a water line. Anybody taps into that water line and get water, right?
Well, if a storm comes and knocks down telephone poles, you're not getting no power.
And it
And
happens
that's
a
what
lot.
this is going. So as far as a storm hitting us and knocking out power, that is not gonna supply us. It's just not.
But it's helping the efficiency of it. Okay, so let's say that your power's PPL doesn't have to increase your.
If it feeds into a grid,
Yes,
PPL is not gonna shut off everybody and just give Waymart power.
I'm not saying that. But PPL and the substations, they may not have to do all those improvements on the substations because they're getting more power coming from this to help supplement their needs. Correct? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So that helps the local community with the PPL and increasing all their fees and stuff like that because now they don't have to bring up their power stations, right?
Well, if you go to PPL's website and you want power, if you want clean, green energy, you pay more for it.
Yes.
You pay 5 cents a kilowatt hour or more for it.
How many homes with that power? How many homes with that power?
I don't know.
On the average?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. Do you know, Doug?
10, 20, 100?
No, I think you're closer to, I'll tell you what, I'll get you an exact number, but it's a number of 100. It's in the hundreds, 500 or something like that. But
I heard you mention that they did generate DC power. Am I right?
Yeah, the panels,
How you gonna convert it to AC? Everything around here is AC.
it's through the inverters.
You
I
have
mentioned that,
inverter?
yeah,
How
that
big
there's,
are they?
they're like yay by yay, but
What are they filled with?
Huh?
What are they filled with to cool?
um,
Cause anytime you're doing that, you're generating heat.
no, it's just air cooled.
So these would be proposed, the inverters proposed for the system are string inverters. So they're just small box inverters that would go, in this case, we have them modeled to be at a more centralized location, strung together, but it's not, these aren't large size inverters. They're smaller inverters that are more spread out in the system.
Are there gonna be any buildings built?
No, for a facility like this, there's no buildings required. There's not a substation or any facilities like that would be put in. There's the combiner that would combine all the power coming in to go to the transformer, and that's it. There wouldn't be, there's nothing proposed that would be a building.
What about the combiner and the transformer? What sizes would they be and where would they be located?
Your combiner boxes are, I mean, like yay.
Yeah, and we have, if I could see,
3x4.
the second page is the inverter stack, and the third page is
Hey.
the combiner.
Yeah.
So it shows.
No.
Good answer. Okay.
Are there any benefits to full-time jobs to the borough, any full-time, part-time jobs?
Just to mow, if we decide to have mowers, there'd be local people that we would have mow us.
That's what I said, what does it benefit the people of Waymart?
So it does, I mean, the electricity from the facility goes into PPL's distribution grid, which is gonna be drawn by whoever's closest to that source. The other benefit, or one of the other benefits on the local community is the developer of PPL, in order to allow and permit the interconnection, requires a developer to pay an impact fee or contribution to upgrade the distribution grid. Now, the utility decides what those upgrades are. They do an engineering study, but the developers do end up paying for upgrades in the system that would be localized upgrades necessary to carry the additional electricity in the local system. So there's, as Joe said, I mean, there may be some local labor used for mowing. It is a passive use. There's not a lot of activity in the facility once it's constructed. So, similar to what's there now, there's no productive or employment-based use of that land now. So that's not going to change. We believe that tends to be more consistent with the area, that it's a passive, low impact use.
I have a question. How did this project come about? Did she reach out to you, or was she approached about this project? I know you said that she's gonna get help with taxes and that such, but did she reach out to you, or is this a project that you were looking for a spot to put?
We did a mailer, and she reached out to us.
It's probably the same one that you got.
I got one too.
Was that sent to everybody, or is it just people with that?
I think it's just
amount?
bigger property owners.
On 96.
Just people that have enough.
You mentioned noise, a noise study. What noise would there be associated with?
So, and
Andy, why don't you just tell me what noise is
So
associated with this?
the transformer and the inverters do, because they do cool themselves. There's some fans in them, so there is a small amount of noise coming out of those. I think the modeling that was done, and we use a consultant from Paxwood Consultants, who's an INCE, a noise engineer. The modeling that was done, your ordinance has a 65 decibel limit at the property line, 55 at night. There's a map in the report that shows where that 65 decibel limit is, and on the equipment that's proposed, because of the size, it's basically just a few feet around where that equipment is shown. By the time it gets to the property lines of this property, it's maximum 35 decibels, and that's not at Belmont Turnpike. It's even less than that.
I hope the adjacent properties.
That would be the property.
So again, there's
This way. So 35. Not to Belmont Turnpike, but the adjacent
Yeah,
properties.
yeah, so to your property to the south,
Yes,
Right next door.
so 35 would be the maximum.
and what is that equivalent to?
Sure. That chart in here, Andy.
I don't think we have it in that report. So 35 decibels though is equivalent to a quiet rural area. The decibel scale is logarithmic, so it's not 70 decibels is not actually just twice as loud as 35. 70 is exponentially louder than 35. So as you get down to levels 35, 30, I think 35 would be quiet conversation or a quiet rural area.
Yeah, it says 35 is a quiet level sound considered ideal for classrooms, lecture halls, and conferences.
So we shouldn't hear these from our houses.
There's nothing to any professors doing lecturing.
Okay.
Is that a constant sound?
During the daytime, it is. At nighttime, the panels aren't producing electricity. There's not electricity going through those. And remember too, this is located on Belmont Turnpike. The sound from this is also going to be drowned out by the sound of all the cars on the road.
What's the plan for transporting the electricity from the array into the actual grid itself?
So there'd be a transformer here, and then it's either gonna go underground or overhead to the actual poles out on the road.
Okay.
And then the conduit's going up the pole to tie in, just like a house would look.
Is that a PP&L thing once you put it in, or are you responsible for that maintenance of that?
That's responsible for that connection.
If the electric bill goes up, who's responsible for that?
There are no lights proposed at night. There should not be anybody there at night for the facility. So generally, these are built unless there's an ordinance requirement that requires some kind of light for the parking spot or anything like that. They're generally built without any lights. There's no need for them, and not anticipated to be people there at nighttime.
Now, if something goes wrong with that system, do you have an emergency notification?
Yeah, on the monitoring, we would actually get an alert. And it's every 15 minutes, so we would know 15 minutes, that it would be at the longest.
In other words, an alarm on the outside of that building.
What's that?
Is there an alarm on the outside of that building
No,
that was built into your system?
No,
There's no building.
There's no building.
This is an alert that goes to us.
You,
Yeah, so that way we know we have to address something.
in other words, it's nothing we have to deal with.
Correct.
All right.
And Joe, could you maybe just show the detail of the fence and the gate?
Yeah.
on the back of it?
What's the probability of something catching on fire?
So, all of this equipment is NEC certified and rated, which is the National Fire Protection Association, National Electrical Code. There should be minimal chance of anything catching on fire, and to the extent anything would, there would be a short circuit or something. There are very few or virtually no flammable components in the panels.
So like I mentioned earlier, the fencing would be just a post cattle fence with, we're gonna have a double swing gate, which is gonna have a lock system to it, that the fire company would have full access into it.
Who maintains the chute?
And the sheep owners.
The farmer.
It grows.
Rough sheep.
Goats are not compatible with.
We can't put goats in them.
Goats have a tendency to be a little bit.
They climb
They
on
do
things.
like to climb.
So the communities that have these, or that you're going to bring them into,
Communities.
like, and I'm
community.
getting there. I'm leading up to my question.
I got you.
A benefit to the community when they bring them in, discounted rate of electricity because it's in your community. Does that happen? Or
So-
once there's a rate, that's it, and
At the present time, it's a PUC tariffed rate that PPL would charge, so it would be the same rate as your current electricity. The electricity is bought by PPL, just like if you had panels on your rooftop and the excess electricity is put back into the grid and you get a credit or an offset for your electrical bill, and if your electrical bill goes to 0 or less, they would actually have to pay you back. That's what's happening with these systems, is PPL is buying the electricity out of the systems, paying the owner of the system, and then that electricity is just used in the distribution system.
A historical question, how far away is this from the cemetery?
The bottom of the hill, 1,000 feet, 800 feet.
oh, here, here.
It is about 300 feet.
300 feet?
So if someone's wanted to access the cemetery, they still can.
Yeah, we're not impeding that whatsoever. There's actually an access here into the cemetery.
The cemetery
We're
is
just gonna be utilizing the same
top
one.
side.
But nobody from the cemetery can see it, but a lot of us like to look at it every time we walk out our door.
You say
So what's
nobody-
negative or what's positive to the community? There's nothing positive. It's just a lot of negative to our neighborhood. That's not your fault.
What's the cost of this project?
Probably $2 million.
Is it government, any government funded at all? Is this totally private? Any government money involved?
There's investment tax credits that we get
Right.
from building, projects like this.
But there's no direct subsidies to
There's not at all.
build any of this.
Did you say any glare study?
Yes.
Jane, isn't there an easement for anybody to go down to that cemetery?
Yeah,
Correct. That's
there
it.
is.
The cemetery's entrance is not down, it's out front. It's right behind the barn there.
It's by the
Yeah.
barn.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
kind
and
of.
Joe, maybe on the aerial you could show. where
I've
that
walked
would
down there
be.
many
It's-
times, but I, didn't know where I walk, and I was just walking.
I mean, the cemetery is here. I was assuming that the entrance.
Yeah, you go in by that barn because we do the flags for
You
Memorial Day.
go to the left of that shed behind the barn,
Here.
right there.
Yep.
Yeah, go, no, go back. Now go straight. Nope.
Nope.
No.
Right here goes straight.
Yeah, go straight across, there you go.
Is that the easement?
Yep,
No. Is it?
yeah.
No, we have done the research and found that there's an actual deeded either right of way or fee simple of access.
Well,
Here.
the gate's out front.
Up here,
That's all rock wall around the whole thing, except
Right.
for out front.
up here,
Yeah,
the gate's up there.
yeah.
What's gonna be next?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so if that's the location of the easement,
I mean, we're
Our
not
access-
changing that whatsoever.
our access would be on the other side of the
Our access
barn,
is-
it's not impacted.
I there any more questions from the audience?
I wanna know why everything has to come to 296 North, the rural country area that we live in.
Andy, you wanna answer that?
So I do wanna, I just do wanna be clear about one thing in your ordinance. I mean, this is a passive use. It's not going to take away this land or develop it in a way that it can't be undone. It's not going to become, and your ordinance does permit multifamily residential dwellings there, which I understand there's probably not a huge demand for that here, but it does also permit quarrying in this area. It would permit junkyard in this area, and it permits greenhouses, and there actually are some right down the road from this. And if you think about it, at the end of the day, these are very similar to a greenhouse use that you would see. There's far less stormwater impact from them, but in terms of reflection, look, things like that, they would be very similar. The traffic would not be nearly as much as that kind of a use. You're not going to have a lot of traffic in and out. You're also not going to have mass grading on the site and things like that. So, although this is rural residential, your ordinance does, and part of your purpose in the rural residential is commercial development or is development of the land, and your ordinance permits certain types of development to take place on the land. And when you get to it at the end of the day, this is actually a less intensive use than multiple of the things that are allowed in that zoning district already. This isn't actively farmland, but we do also make the point a lot of times when this is going on farmland, you're on farmland, the farmers are spraying fertilizers, they're spraying herbicides and pesticides, they're putting things like that down, which won't be the case here. I mean, there'll be some minor, I think some spot treatment of herbicides. There will be some used at the beginning to get the whole facility in the mix of grass that's used, and it is a special solar specific mix. I think on this one, on the plans, I think we have the Fuzz and Buzz mix provided. There's a seed manufacturer or a seed producer in Meadville, PA that produces 5 or 6 different solar specific seed mixes. The Fuzz and Buzz is designed to be nutritious for grazing animals, for sheep in particular, and it's also designed to be pollinator heavy in the species that are planted with it. So although this is development of the property, and we understand that this is change and it's change to everyone, it is a use that will remain passive and not generate a lot of traffic, not generate a lot of odor, dust, noise, and it is a use that will be stable for an extended period of time. There's not going to be a tremendous amount of change in it. It's going to be stable, and once it's there, it's there. The panels also, if you've driven anywhere and you've seen these facilities, especially if you've seen them at a distance like this one would be viewed, they really don't change the landscape dramatically because they follow the contours of the land, not, again, grading the land and creating slopes or hills, things like that. They generally just follow the contour of the land. So we do believe, although it is certainly change, we do believe that it's a change that's consistent, fits with the area, and is a relatively small change in the landscape when you consider the larger landscape around it. Sure.
My concern is that once you give up your zoning to conditional use, there's no stopping now. Every piece of open land, every piece of farmland, it's going to happen. Once you do this right now, if this is allowed, there's no stopping.
Well,
Am I right or am I wrong?
your zoning can be changed in the future if you decide that you do not want this use. There are limiting factors to it, like availability of land. I mean, this is a 90-acre parcel. Certainly not anywhere close to that 90 acres is conducive to doing this kind of development, and that's
But
tends to be
anybody with 15 acres can do this.
there at certain locations that is potentially true under your zoning at the current time. That is something that can be changed and can be looked at by the borough going forward. At the same time, that's the possibility. Any of those properties could currently be developed through conditional use into multifamily dwellings. They could be developed into junkyards. They could be developed into quarries. They could be developed into numerous other uses currently. And there's not necessarily demand to do that.
So that's why we have ordinances.
Right, well, and that's under your current ordinance would allow that in this zoning district, but there's not, just because it's allowed doesn't mean there's demand to do it everywhere. And so, we are here with this project. We can't speak to what the future would hold or what other developers would potentially do. The borough can address that if it is a concern. I don't know how many other applications the borough's received or inquiries the borough's received, but
This opens the door.
on the grand scale, these are diverse and spread out. So, the concentration, although they are being built because there is a huge demand for electricity going into the future with artificial intelligence, the demand for electricity is going to become greater and greater, and we do at the end of the day need a mix of generation resources, and especially renewable resources that are passive. This again, we're proposing this at this site, and we're not proposing other facilities in the borough. We can't speak to what other landowners would be doing.
You had, I know you mentioned before you had a lot of.
Question. You sent out flyers to property owners concerning this project, right? Did you send a letter to the Department of Corrections and the federal prison that has a lot of land?
Hundreds of acres.
That's the last.
I have a
year or
second
two-
question too. Sure.
The last year or two, we've fought, just like now, we fought an electric facility that wanted to be up in the meadow across the way. We fought a drug and alcohol rehab.
Don't fight it.
Pardon?
Still fighting.
You're exactly right.
Where they built
And
the
it's
federal-
all, why does it have to be right in our neighborhood, right there?
My second question.
The next neighborhood you go to says the same thing, why is it not?
Is it the monetary value of having this put on a property owner's property?
No.
Is it that great?
No.
I know you have a 30-year lease. In other words, if I had 90 acres and I asked you to come in, is that pretty monetary value for me?
Yes. 2,500 an acre is what we're paying.
A year?
Or yearly.
How much? is it?
2,500 an acre?
An acre per year.
For the whole 100 or just for the acreage you're using?
Just for the acres.
Just the acreage that you're using.
So you're using 11 acres, you said, correct?
Where they built the federal prison, you got 4,500 acres to play with.
You wanna
Can I-
condemn Linda because.
Can I just ask, so the way it's zoned right now, if
Exactly.
Linda sold her land tomorrow to somebody, they could build houses there, so there's nothing, right, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's nothing stopping Linda from selling the land and somebody developing it into houses?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay, and we get 30 years of just
Correct.
solar farm, okay. I just wanted to clarify, because
And you did,
Because you guys, you've done a lot of these projects like this. So these projects have neighbors, they have bordering neighbors that border the project. Those properties had property value before the project went in. If I, the property owner, sold a property that bordered one of those other ones, is there any sort of study? Were they able to sell their home property for what it was worth before the project went in? Is there any study of what this does to the property value?
does it depreciate the value of neighboring properties?
So we did not do a property value impact study for this project, mainly because the project is so distant from any homes. We typically only do those when we're closer to, you know, say 100, 150 feet from homes. The property value studies, and there is actually good data now in Pennsylvania. There have been sales in Pennsylvania. Nationwide, there have been lots of sales around solar farms. Pennsylvania, it's more of a recent phenomenon. There is good data on it now. There is virtually no change. There's no statistically significant change. In other words, outside of the margin of error in property values around these facilities. There was just a national study that was done, that was released just a few months ago, that again found that there was zero impact to facilities like this going in. One of the reasons, if you talk to the people who do the property value studies, one of the reasons is it's a passive use that's low impact and low interference or low effect on surrounding properties, and it's also fixed for a long period of time. So people who move in there know what their neighbor is going to be and know what their neighbor is going to be long term. It's not going to turn into a 20-house subdivision. It's not going to turn into a trucking facility, or where I'm from in Pennsylvania, we've had millions and millions of square feet of warehouse being built in places like this on farmland. It's not going to turn into things like that. So there hasn't been there hasn't been any, especially in rural areas like this, there hasn't been any studies done to date that have shown negative impacts on the property value. Those studies have shown that it's statistically insignificant difference in property values. We do, when we do those property impact value studies, we work with an expert who's done lots of those and has a large database of the properties and analysis that they've done, and is able to address those things. But again, when we're talking about a facility that is this far from any of the neighboring properties, there's no impact. It's just so far away. You're talking, to the extent that it's more of a concern, you're 100, 150 feet away from the panels.
What about vegetative screening around the project?
So what we are proposing, and if we're going to discuss this, we'll get into.
While you're passing it out, one question. Wayne County has at least 3 more projects being put forward for solar. Are you aware of those other projects, and is any of them your projects?
Solar Renewable Energy is, in full disclosure, they are doing a project in Paulpack Township. And we were there, we've already had the hearing there. It's a similar type of project and size of project. I know when we were there for that project, there was one other project that was, I believe, is approved at this point for there, but also a small project.
Thank you.
So this is the glare analysis that we had done on the project, and we are proposing, if you turn to page 7, You can see, we are proposing screening on the western side and the southern side of the project back to where the natural screening starts. A lot of this site is already surrounded by wooded areas, but we do have screening in those areas. What we had done is a glare analysis using Sandia National Laboratories, a number of years ago, developed a glare modeling program software that was used by the FAA to model glare for airports and traffic controllers. That's been adopted by the solar industry and is the standard for the solar industry to model glare. I believe there's one other software program out of Europe that's used occasionally. I've never seen it used in the US. This is the model that's always used. The model takes into account topography, tilt and angle of the panels, the type of panels, and again, we're proposing panels with an anti-glare coating or an anti-reflective coating, and it takes into account the configuration and layout of the site, and then it does take into account vegetation, structures, things like that. So this study, and then when we talk about glare, there's three types of glare. There's green glare, which has low potential for any temporary after image. It's effectively innocuous glare or completely barely noticeable glare, I guess would be a way to describe it. There is yellow glare that has the potential for temporary after image, which is more akin to like a reflection you would see off of a car window as light hit it, or off of a body of water, off of a pond or a lake. And then there's what we're looking for in these studies, and what is a concern is if there's any kind of red glare, which would be potential for any kind of eye damage or any kind of harm. And that would be more akin to something like staring at the sun for too long, things like that, where you would have any kind of an impact. The conclusions of this study are on page 8. With doing the screening that we currently are proposing, there is a small amount of green glare that would affect, or not affect, but would be noticed or would be modeled on Belmont Turnpike, as well as I think the end of Silvercrest Drive. And we're talking about very minor, so in this study, the only glare that was identified was in the morning as the sun would be coming up from this angle at low angles across the panels. And it was only for, I think it was impacting for a portion of the year, 22 minutes in total a day, or 20 minutes. There were 4 residences that would have experience small amounts of green glare, typical kinds of time frames. There's one observation point where there were 44 minutes of yellow glare throughout the entire year. So that's 44 minutes in an entire year of that. There was no other glare identified in the model, in the study, and the comparison that was put in here, which is pulled from FAA guidance, was that the impact, even of a yellow glare, would be like the reflection of the sun coming up in the morning off of a body of water, or off of like a glass building or a greenhouse. So those were the only impacts that the study showed, which is a very which is a very minimal effect of anything. The conclusion in the study is that it would have no adverse impact on anyone. And we have also talked to the landowner about even potentially some additional screening along Belmont Turnpike, if that would be necessary or anyone would request it. There are places to do that. And if, before we answer the question, if just you could explain the topography and why that's screening the height differences across the valley.
You mean the elevation from
Yeah,
here to here?
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could see that pretty clear on some of those images that I had. Let me pull that up here. So this is one area that we were talking to Linda today about putting some trees along here. And then that would block the visibility from the road to this back field. So you basically have this back field pretty much lower than this road up here. So anything you put here is going to block that view back there since this is higher. So she has, like I said earlier, we have a bunch of homes and stuff. So what we would do is supplement those gaps and put some additional bushes, shrubs, some sort of evergreen type material in there to block that view through there.
Actually, you're putting trees along that road to make a snow fence.
Pardon me?
You're letting build them trees there to make a snow fence.
Yeah.
By the time they blow out of Donnie, that snow blows out of Donnie's, if it gets behind them trees, you're not gonna go up that road.
So I have a question. On page 26 where it says Wayman Drive, PV array is expected to produce the following glare for this receptor. 1,195 minutes. That's about 12 hours, right? Am I right?
Right, annually.
Is that annually?
Yes.
12 minutes or 12 hours of green glare with low potential to cause temporary afterimage. So that means for the whole year, about 12 hours of glare for the people on Wayman Drive?
Yes.
I have one question. If this project was to go through and people have complaints, who do they address the complaints to?
So this is, and I will say one of the unique things about this developer, and it's one of the nice things about working for them and doing their projects is you will build and operate the system. It's a system that you intend to own. Is that correct? That's correct.
So any complaints, like, they don't come to a borough meeting complaining about something, they would come to you.
That's right.
Anything more you want to present? Any
I have
more?
a question. You're concerned about 296 and plant trees. Wayman Drive is on my property. I was looking at this thing 24 hours a day. And some people here that live on Wayman Drive, and they're gonna see it.
Where's Lane? Can you point to me where you're at, sir? Because we can put some other trees along your property or something as well.
Well, the trees you.
Here's the nursing home, wherever that was.
Yes.
Here's Wayman Drive right here.
Okay.
Here.
Okay.
That's my field there.
So we can
So
put
it's
something.
right
We can
here.
put something in here.
Yeah, well, that is where, Joe, we are proposing,
That's where they are.
we are proposing screening along here. So we are proposing screening that would,
Expand that existing woods this way.
purpose is to screen it as much as possible. Belmont Turnpike and those properties.
Thank you.
So you said after the 30 years, you remove and take everything. Okay, let's say that, and I hope that it never ever happens, because you don't ever want it to happen to anybody's business. But say that you have to sell the business and someone else buys it, is that going to carry over? Will you have something in writing saying, okay, you're buying our business, this is where our solar panels are, you have to go pick them up? It's part of the sale agreement.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and your ordinances your performance standards and your ordinance would continue to apply regardless of who would own the property, regardless of even necessarily what's in, if you were to give an approval, what's in your approval, the landowner has to, just like everyone else, has to continue to comply with the ordinances. Those performance standards would continue to apply, and if the project wasn't complying with them, then the borough could bring an enforcement action for that, just the same as you enforce zoning against others.
And what if something happens to Linda, and I don't want that to happen, and the next person who buys a property doesn't want that on their property? Do they still have to follow through with that 30-year contract?
Yes.
Yes.
It's a contract and it would be a recorded.
If something happened, a hurricane went through there 6 years ago. Tornado. I don't think it was 130 miles an hour. But if the next one is 130 and it destroys that thing, they just walk away from it. Are we, as the borough, responsible for this?
No, they clean it up.
No, wait a minute. I read something somewhere that at the end of the 30 years, when it has no more useful life, the company just finds it cheaper to walk away from it.
Right.
Right.
Yes, and I've also heard too that some of the panels can't be recycled at all because of the heavy metals and stuff that is in them. Is that true?
So these are not those types of panels, so
Okay.
There is, and actually, we do have this for you.
You're overwhelming us with paper here.
This is an educational process, and we want people to understand what we're doing.
Teresa, if we go back and answer your question, what happens is they could just leave and then the homeowner is stuck with.
That's why I was wondering if there's a bond put up initially to reclaim it.
Well, that's the issue. There's gonna be a bond.
And what if they in 4 or 5 years have a great discovery that makes these obsolete?
You just walk away.
That's what worries me.
If you need exhibit A, just go over the mountain and look at all the strip
Would that-
mountains over there.
Exactly.
The coal companies just walked away from it. So,
That's actually what's happening with the windmills up there right now.
Exactly.
You got all that
Walk
strip
away.
lines over there that.
They don't want to.
Are you going to walk away from
Issue
it?
a bond covering in case these. They just
So
walk
does
away
it-
from The homeowner, the landowner is responsible for taking them down. and-
Does a bond cover that as well? Like if it's 20 years in,
if there's gonna be a bond, some sort of bond in place for removal of it. it's-
so you can put that into a bond.
That's on Lindell,
I
right?
can put that into a requirement.
So
That should be the property.
That could be a condition.
Yeah, that's on.
That can be a condition.
Conditional use is granted.
Right, and decommissioning isn't something that is problematic. I mean, I think that's built into the.
It is if you don't do it.
It is, but I think there are ways to make sure that occurs.
And maybe you could
There's
address that
protections
at the
there.
hearing.
Okay. And I do also want to say, I mean, it's the comparison with abandoned or unreclaimed mining land and things is difficult to make. The scale of this is much smaller, but also it is equipment that can be stripped out of the land and moved away. The land hasn't been disturbed. It's not a massive pit in the ground or problem like that that's causing. Obviously, there's a lot of acid mine drainage issues that go with that, things like that that aren't similar risks to this kind of a project. So what we did have prepared, and we find this useful with projects, is Tommy Cleveland is an engineer in North Carolina. North Carolina is far ahead of Pennsylvania in solar facility and solar development. Tommy Cleveland worked at the North Carolina Clean Technology Center, which is part of North Carolina State. When he was there, he wrote a white paper back in 2017 on health and safety issues of solar panels, and that's an often cited article that was written. One of the better known articles on the subject and the subject matter. What we've done is have him take a look at our equipment, our layout, our glare study, our sound study, and do an analysis or a summary analysis of health and safety related to the facility, and also address a few of the things that have come up this evening, in particular regarding fire safety. And what he's doing in the report is just identifying and making sure that the panels meet those industry standards. He addresses the toxicity and the nature of the panels, describes the difference between the cadmium-based panels and these panels. They're 100% silicon. And the only metals in the panels are a small portion for soldering, wiring, and things like that. Types of things that you would have in any house. He addressed electromagnetic fields, and there's a lot of misconceptions about solar facilities and impact on electromagnetic fields or production of electromagnetic fields. He does address the glare in here, and gives his analysis as well as the noise, and he does at the end address the removal and disposal, and that there are ways to recycle these panels. I believe even at the end of a 30-year lifespan, the panels still are rated to have an 80% efficiency. So there are markets, whether those markets are overseas in less developed countries or other places. There are potentially markets for those panels to recycle them, and the last option is to landfill them. But those things are all addressed in here, and so we've provided this to try to just give an overview, and then he does have some of the positive health impacts of solar systems in the United States, and just the reduction in particulate matter in particular over coal or even gas-fired electric generation facilities. These are not producing any of those things. Coal facilities, we have a large one in York County that I don't live too far from and represent the municipality that's in. There's been a lot of lead deposited in the area over the years from the emissions and the fallout from those emissions. These facilities don't have those kinds of problems or carry with them those kinds of problems. And then obviously we all know and have read plenty and heard plenty about climate change and the impacts of carbon dioxide emissions on that, and these are a different source of energy. These are not going to power the entire world, but it's going to take a mix of a lot of different kinds of energy sources to power the world in the future. So we do also have, and I'll unless someone wants to take a look at it, we have also done a Pennsylvania Natural Diversity Inventory for the entire property, not just the area that will be the panels, just to confirm that there are no threatened or endangered species habitat on this property. And that's something that's done as a matter of course and a standard part of Solar Renewable Energy's operating procedure as they work on or pick sites for projects.
Any other questions?
Yes. What would happen if you got the okay on this, the chances of expanding it more?
These facilities are capped at 3 megawatts per facility by the PUC. I don't think, Joe, I don't think there's land there to.
Linda's comment was she wanted it back further, to where it is right there. She didn't want it to come any closer to her home with it all, so.
But what would be the chance to go into the woods, take the woods in?
No,
You can't.
we wouldn't do that.
What are you gonna do with the wildlife?
The wildlife can go underneath
cattle fence, they can go through as a cattle fence, they can crawl underneath it, go over it. No impact to the wildlife. They can still, eat the grass next to the panels.
If
No.
the sheep are gonna survive, then the wildlife will survive.
That's right.
Yeah.
Anything else? I appreciate all of you coming, and we've had some really wonderful questions. And our mayor, and I thank him for coming, and our attorney, is there anything else?
Oh, we just have to schedule the hearing. We can do that tonight, or we can call it tomorrow and do whatever you want.
Whichever is more convenient for you. I think we were talking about the 19th to 21st.
Enough time to advertise this.
We have,
Budget meeting is on the
budget meeting
19th.
is the 19th, the budget meeting for the year.
21st would be better.
You guys have a preference?
Plan on my whole November here.
I believe the
You're gonna be here.
21st work for you, Doug.
You say that you put that freeze on tonight.
Excuse me.
It's a Thursday.
I'll tell you what, I'm
I do
Anything
not know
else,
that
folks?
I
You can ask them questions afterwards.
Is there, did you need it, I can probably get you one later.
Well, I'll let you read it.
You're in first.
Yeah, 21st is good.
Yeah, we'll need a court report.
How about the 26th?
Andy, how about Tuesday the 26th? We usually do everything on Tuesdays. Tuesday the 26th.
I like Tuesdays, but,
So that's the Tuesday before Thanksgiving?
Yes.
yeah, that's, yeah.
Okay.
I will have to, I'm going out of town for Thanksgiving. I'll have to, I will have to check with my boss. Whether-
Bring her with you.
Yeah, whether or not.
Monday the 25th,
This
Tuesday
could
the
be,
26th.
you're out of town too.
You guys staying over, or you drive up and drive back?
Yeah, we'll drive back.
It's
I
only
think the
3
25th or
hours.
the
You want to just
26th
settle on
may
the
work.
phone?
Yeah. Call me tomorrow, Andy, we'll work it out, okay?
Anything else, folks? All right, the hearing, or not the hearing?
Not a hearing, Jane.
It's not the hearing, I know you told me that.
A workshop.
The workshop is finished. If you have other questions, the gentleman will ask them after it's
So I'm the
over.
secretary, so any correspondence, like